What does Kevin Costner have to say about the West? I'm Jason Herbert, and Horizon is next on Historians of the Movies podcast. All right, shall we jump into this Horizon film that we're going to do? All right, let's introduce you guys. First and foremost, I'm going to introduce Megan. Welcome back to the pod. You're OG. You were like, when we first started conceptualizing this, I was like, you want to trust me on this? You're like, sure, why not? So welcome back. It's been like a year. So you want to introduce yourself? Because I thought about,
sure.
Boy, does this movie hit your work?
Oh, it does indeed. And yet does not at all as well.
But does it?
But does it?
But does it?
I am Megan Kate Nelson. I am a historian and writer, originally from Colorado, now living in Boston. And I started off as a historian, an environmental historian of the Southeast. And then I turned back around and went home. And now I write books about the 19th century West.
All right, Kate?
Well, I'm a historian of the environment and science, often I call myself a Western historian, but more often than not, I'm writing about the Midwest. And I am also the host of the Drafting the Past podcast. But I'm also a Westerner to my core. So I am very excited to talk about this movie.
Good, because I'm looking forward. You're also coming on later on to do Twisters, which we're excited about to do.
I'm so excited
to watch that movie. It comes out on my birthday. So
I'm really hopeful. I'm trying not to get my hopes up. I have very low expectations, but I want it to be like a good popcorn movie.
No way, man! I am all in on Glenn Powell. I'm like, Did you guys watch Hitman?
Yes.
No.
Oh,
speaking of a smoke show,
which one?
Well, just Glenn Powell in anything is.
I'm going to say Adrian Arjona because I was casting the HATM movie the other night. I was like, she is the romantic lead opposite me. And that's okay.
There you go. There you go.
It's unfortunate for me, but yes. All right. Yes.
Glenn Powell, I still associate with him with his Screen Queens character. Did you guys see that show?
Oh, no. I have seen the famous clip from that show.
I loved that show. Well, the first season anyway, and he is amazing in that. But it is still what I think of. So to think of him as this sex symbol now is still throwing me off.
I know.
Do you know his dad? Like he apparently started an Instagram account for his dad, and his dad's Instagram account is something like OG Glenn Powell. Is the handle? Because I think he's like senior or whatever. So I like his work, man. He is hitting a string of like really smart choices. With kind of the lower budget stuff. He's playing likable characters. Even in Maverick, he was like, Megan just gave us the thing. All right, well, we're going to talk about Horizon. There's going to be a lot of today. Yeah. So let's just, all right, before we get into this film, I want to talk about the process of going to this film, this theater. Because one of the things I was interested in seeing this was like, who's going to go watch this movie? You know, I was wondering if there's going to be like Yellowstone bleed over, crossover. Who's going to is this movie going to do well? Does not look like it's doing very well at the theater right now, which I was afraid of just because I want to see stories about the West do well. I want to see, because this is, and I was talking to the guy the other day, it's like, this is a capital M movie. This is a big production. I want to believe in the theater still. I still enjoy going to the theater. So I was hoping it would do well, but like Megan, I think did you get a screener on this? Is what you did?
No, and no one I know got a screener either. Which apparently is like some kind of signal that maybe they don't want people to write about it before it comes out. But there were Thursday showings here in Boston. So I went to the earliest possible Thursday showing, 3 p.m. In the Boston Seaport, which is like a new glitzy part of Boston, at the Alamo Draft House, which I don't know if you've ever been to these.
Yeah.
They have one. Yeah. Okay. And so I went, and it was me and 4 dudes. And 2 of them were a father-son.
Okay.
And the other 2 were just dudes.
Was it Ben Affleck and Matt Damon?
Oh, I wish. I wish it had been the 2 of them, but no, sadly, I don't think so. Yeah. So that was my situation.
Okay. Kate, what about you?
So I'm here in Kansas City, and I'm in the city, and I went to the AMC that's just down the road on a Saturday night. So it was like a solid date night situation. So they had it in like one of the smaller theaters at this AMC that was maybe half full, and it seemed like a lot of couples, and one really loud older lady who I think was there with like her son and daughter-in-law.
Oh, no.
I think she was hard of hearing because she kept commenting on things very loudly. But I was curious because this was a very low turnout. I looked at screenings around kind of the metro area, like out in the suburbs, and it seemed to be a little better. There were more seats sold the farther away you got from the city, which I thought was kind of interesting.
I can totally see that. Yeah.
I booked like the Friday at like 1:00 show. And it turns out that my job wanted me to work in the afternoon, so I didn't get to go. Crap. You're welcome,
Ridiculous.
taxpayers. The sacrifices I make. They were like, "Oh, we need you to take care of the forest because you work for us," which is, I thought bullshit.
Nature is stupid.
I know. Actually, it's a lot of people who work with the Forest Service don't listen in on this pod, and I'm like, I am so sorry. So, hi guys.
Ignore everything I say.
Oh wait. Well, I'm waiting for the Gettysburg episode to drop tomorrow because I talk shit about the national parks like nonstop. Because now that I'm Forest Service, did you guys not know about the rivalry? Oh, there's a hardcore rivalry.
It does not surprise me.
Forest Service. Yeah, I'm here now. There's gonna be a rivalry. I'm like, whatever, stupid uniforms. We got smoky there.
I assume they only drink Pepsi in the Park Service.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Colorado's a Pepsi state. That's how you know it's still playing.
No.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. I'm working on it. Don't worry. Just give it time. I'm gonna fix it. I went so I ended up having to go on like a Saturday night, and I was dog tired. And the show started at 6 p.m. And the problem is so I get there, and you're absolutely right. Theater's about a third full. I'm the youngest guy in the theater. Older folks around me. There was an older white couple next to me, and then an older African American couple, and some other folks, and so forth. The older white couple were like really excited, like during the previews, and then left like 47 minutes into the show. They just got up and left. I don't know why.
Burn. It's a
don't
burn.
Know. I think they were running for president and had to get up and go attend to something or whatever. I know, right? I had to. So forth, but it wasn't very busy at all. What I was paying attention to, what they really got into? Kate and I were talking about this. The Ronald Reagan trailer before the theater.
Which Megan didn't see.
I did not see. I did not get this trailer. No, I only got like 3 movies. I got Twisters, and I got like 2
Twisters.
others I can't remember. Yeah. But who's playing Reagan?
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, he doesn't look that bad as Reagan. I mean, Reagan was like, when I would teach high school, I would show pictures of Reagan as a young guy before I tell them they were president, and all the young ladies in the class were like, "Who is this guy?" Because he was smoke show. Like we talk about Hanson as presidents, and we never want to talk about Reagan because it makes us feel bad. It's like,
it's
right?
gross.
But he was a handsome dude all the way up until his into it well into his older age. But yeah, so there was that, and like the people next to me, the older white couple, were like really into the Reagan trailer. I mean, just hardcore, just like, yeah, he saved America, and they did the trailer like Mr. Gorbachev bring down this wall and so forth, and
they're like, woo!
Yeah, they didn't do the part where like I'm going to destroy the economy, or anything. But
I quoted the trailer to my husband when I came home because I kid you not, almost word for word, the line is like, former governor of California, he can't do much about the Soviets, but a president, now he can do something.
Oh my
Amazing.
God. What? How are these movies getting made? How
I
is this
looked up
happening?
the producer on it, and I think it's
Yeah?
a pretty like he's done other real movies, and then this one like. I mean, I think he does, movies like I had heard. Now I can't remember what, but movies I'd heard of, and then. But he also his production company is like Crusade something. Like I think there's a very sort of like Christian, maybe right leaning. It's definitely a Reagan hagiography.
No. Yikes.
Just
that was, I don't even know. I mean, as I wrote in, so for listeners out there who have not seen this, I wrote a review for Slate, and where I talked extensively about what Alamo Drafthouse does, which is that they show you 30 minutes before the movie starts this reel of just like previews and other content that's related to what you're about to see. And it was fascinating. I mean, some of these Westerns I had not known about or seen, where they were showing the full trailers, which are like 3 minutes long. And they're, from the 50s, the 60s, and 70s. But I thought that in itself was fascinating, that that's what they were showing. And I was like, is Horizon going to be like a throwback 1950s Western?
In some ways, yes, though, right? I mean, I'm going to get into it here in a second. Also, thank you for covering this. Like, my headphones just completely died on me just a second ago. I'm just switching around.
Oh, no.
No, I was totally panicking over here. So I was like, it was like
We're
the
professionals.
scene. Well, it was like the scene where the kid like changes horse like mid stride.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
Cool. All right, we'll
that was the best scene in the whole movie.
That was not the best scene in the whole movie. You were
pretty good scene.
All right, we're going to get into this contrasting opinions. Now we're going to have Jason take. It's like what we're seeing is Welcome to Jason and Megan Are No Longer Friends, starring Kate's Crystal Look. So.
No, Kate will side with me on most things. I feel like.
Welcome to Kate.
I feel
awkward.
like.
So. All right, this is what we're going to do. I want to talk a little bit about the film in a non-spoilery fashion, if we can. So if people are still contemplating seeing the film, we won't ruin anything. And then we'll just lay out, say, hey, we're going to go ahead and spoil the film from here on out. I expect the first part to last like 10 seconds and then go from there. So let's start, I guess, initially with some general impressions of the two of you, like of the film, in I guess maybe in a non-spoilery way. Megan, what's your general thoughts on Horizon? Now that you've had an opportunity to see it and pontificate on it for the past few days, how do you feel about Horizon? Chapter 1 of part of 4, by the way.
4, possibly 5.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so for people who haven't seen it yet, this is a 3-hour movie. Important to remember. It is also, as Jason just said, chapter 1 of 4, perhaps 5 total chapters. So it really is kind of meant to be an epic sort of experience with a lot of different characters. And it has 4, correct me if I'm wrong, 4 different narrative arcs. One that takes place in this sort of nascent town of Horizon, which is in the San Pedro Valley, which is not identified in any other way. So you sort of have to know your Western geography, or at least you sort of, or you kind of take a hint from the environment and you're like, oh, this must be the Southwest, because there aren't any saguaro, which there should be, which Kate and I should talk about, but because they filmed it in Utah, not in Arizona, but it has a desert feel to it.
These are all colonial terms, Megan.
I'm sorry. There is a narrative in Montana that is connected to a narrative in Wyoming pretty early on, but in a somewhat confusing way. And then there is a Santa Fe Trail narrative. Right. Am I getting all of them? Did I get all of them?
It's worth noting that in the Horizon narrative, there are actually 2 sub-narratives.
That's correct.
There's also a narrative that we don't see on screen just yet.
That's
very
true.
Much, which we saw at the very end. The only part in the film when I was confused was towards the very end, which we'll get into in a bit.
Yes.
But basically, the question of who's promoting Horizon. There's another narrative here that we don't see on screen in this film, right? I mean, so there's like it's like the Shadow Committee. There's like another group. But go ahead, keep going, Megan. You said 15 narratives. 12 states.
57 narratives.
Okay.
There are 57 narratives and
this is ambitious.
8,000 protagonists.
Right.
And yes, so really, and Costner has said in interviews, and other cast members have as well, that like the town is the main character.
Yeah.
And I going into that was very interested in that, the possibilities of that narrative, because I think, and Kate and I have talked, and Kate talks to writers all the time about how one goes about writing history and writing engaging history. And like, this is one possible way to do it, right? You take like one place and then you're like, okay, who are all the people like circulating in and out of this place? How do they get there? All of this. And of course I was very interested to see kind of these narratives that just kind of pop in and out and are interwoven where the people don't meet, because I do some of that in my own writing. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe this doesn't work as well as I think it does.
I think you do a great job of it, Megan.
Well, you are very sweet. But so you're basically, I felt like this chapter 1 was introducing you to a lot of people. You're probably not going to remember their names.
Nope.
Except for one of them, Marigold, after whom our podcast cocktail is named.
Yes.
Because they say her name over and over and over again. Nobody else though. Like no one else.
No, you're like, because you're like, Kevin Costner's on screen.
I know. Like, what's his name? We don't know. They say it one time, I think, like near the end.
Yeah.
So, you don't really know who they are, or they have no backstory. And that doesn't matter. That's kind of equal opportunity.
Sure.
Like the indigenous people have no backstory. Yeah. The white people have no backstory. There are a couple Black characters, a couple Hispano characters, one of who is a smoke show. That
guy's a snazzy dresser.
He was so hot, and there was so little of him.
I
was like, "What? Can we get Derek Guy from Twitter to like talk about the fashion of his?" He reminded me of the dude in The Lincoln Lawyer, who was also in the recent Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
I want to wear a vest. I want to wear a vest.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
But go on.
You should wear a vest. You could get away with it.
Have you not noticed?
You're a stranger now.
Have you not noticed? I started to like bust out the more and more Colorado stuff. I'm like rocking the flannel now. I got a cowboy hat.
Do it.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
I feel like in addition to our drinks, we should have had costumes for this episode. I almost brought my jean jacket. Nice.
I wore my jean jacket.
You are rocking denim.
For those of you, and it's actually kind of militaristic. And so I feel like I am both a cowboy and
an extra from the postman is what you are.
Officer. That's what I am. Yes.
Okay.
So I will intone on Manifest Destiny and Native Rights in monotone later in the podcast. But yes, so this is all the kind of setup, and we're meeting these people and we're seeing lots of beautiful Western handsome vistas, and some things happen, but not really a lot of things. Right. So that would be my description of the movie. Some things happen, but not a lot of things. That's my tagline.
All right.
For the movie.
Quite literally, as I'm looking at the screen, Megan is actually reviewer number 2. So this is very much in line.
Yes.
You are in middle. You are in the middle. So
and I'm harsh. I am harsh.
Are you?
And I have no apologies.
You know what?
No apologies.
I feel like you could say this like my ex-mother-in-law would say before the divorce. Is like, I'm criticizing you, but it comes from a place of love. It was not.
No,
it was. Then she paid for the attorneys. All right, Kate, your turn. What did you think about this? No.
I mean, Megan and I were messaging the second I got out of the theater.
I was not on this.
I feel like my summary of this movie is sort of summed up by the fact that in my showing, at one point I checked my watch because I thought surely we're almost done, and there was still an hour to go.
Are you serious? Okay.
And yet at the end of it, a woman next to me said, wait, that's it? Because that's the thing. Like, it's so long, so much happens, and yet also nothing happens in this movie. Like, none of the characters were well developed. I felt like it's unclear what many of the plot lines are doing. It's obvious because we've all been to movies that they're all going to intersect at some point. But at this point, it's hard for me to understand how they're going to intersect in a way that doesn't feel really weird and forced because they're so wide. And yeah, I mean, there's just this problem where, like, not only can I not remember their names, but I mean, Megan, in your article for Slate, you talked about how none of the native characters have backstories. But like you said, like, he's very equal opportunity in that sense. Almost no one has a backstory in this, except for Jenna Malone, who I'm always happy to see working because I love her. And we do get her backstory. But at the same time, like, is she dead? Is she alive? Not really sure. Right. Does it matter? Also not sure. Why does Kevin Costner duel that? Sorry, this is the spoiler-free part.
All right, you know what? Wait, no. This Kevin Costner's dueling thing is actually in the trailers, so I feel like that's okay. You're good.
Okay. So, but I mean, I would have expected from the trailer that you would know why he was dueling that guy by the time you got there, and I'm still not really sure. I thought
that guy was going to be around longer.
Right? I ended up... That's how I felt about so many characters in this movie. And I mean, like you said, Jason, there was a point where I'm watching the movie thinking, I thought Giovanni Ribisi was in this movie. And then it's like the last 10 seconds where it's like, there he is.
There he is.
Hey, all right.
Because it was a preview. I mean, I felt like this was a movie that should have been a series. It should have been a series on Netflix.
Absolutely. Yes.
And we would have like gone with it, and we would have been like, yeah, man. Like this 3 hours would have been condensed into the first 2 episode drops. There would have been some sort of editing sort of discipline like exerted on it. And we would have been stoked. And we would have been like, yeah, let's see what happens next. But when you're in a movie theater experience, like, you expect, I think, an arc that is complete.
and especially, I felt like if you had not been paying attention to the press leading up to this movie, you would have left the theater so confused. Because even at the very end, you get this, like, what is, I guess, coming next season.
Yeah, that was a weird.
Yeah.
All right, we'll
but there's no like indicator that's what you're watching. But but I wanted to say that I want to give Kevin Costner the benefit of the doubt. I don't know why. I feel sorry for Kevin Costner in this situation, but I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But even if there is a work of genius here, one thing you know as a writer is that you need to start out strong and hook people. And if you go to a 3-hour movie and you're not even sure what's happening at the end of it, what are the odds that you're going to pay $15 again to come back to see number 2 and then 3 and 4 and maybe 5? It's a lot to ask of viewers.
Yeah. Okay. So I had my thoughts on this, which was that in some ways, I wanted to get out there because Horizon, it seemed like this was an opportunity to talk about a lot of different things about the West where I am now, obviously, but it's like Megan's work, like Megan, you're talking about like, this is your work and it's also not your work, right? There's like this duality here. It's like, hey, there's the Civil War, it's happening. But also, it's almost like in some ways, it's almost too early to even review, say, this film, because we won't really know how this film plays out until we've seen how it fits in with, say, the other pieces, right? Like, are we going to get backstories, or like, how are these things going to, engage with one another? These stories, like, it's super ambitious, right? Now, give the guy credit for this, for like introducing essentially War and Peace. I was like, because it's like nobody, like, when you watch the movie, it's like, I was thinking about this the other day, it's like, who is the star of this show, of this movie thus far? Like, is there a single character who really struck you as the protagonist? I could think of the antagonists, but and I get the sense that ultimately, we'll get into this, the land company is the big bad in this ultimately, and there's probably a lot to say about capitalism and Manifest Destiny and this push west and things like that, and why it's being driven by certain forces. But like, who's the hero of our story yet? Because Costner's not really in it that much, not in the first one, and he's really he's not really like, he's just, he's not like the big hero either, not in his role thus far. Not what Worthington maybe, but I mean, I like Worthington, but he's not in it enough. So there's no central lead thus far. There's a lot of likable people and people that I feel like I can relate to. Talking about Piancene, right? I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. The young Apache man who is in, trying, like so many people at this point in time trying to figure out, hey, how do I respond to this American invasion, right? And the duel he's having with his own father over what do we do next. And I find myself sympathetic to both guys because there's no easy answer here. Right? And they're both trying to figure out, the women amongst them are trying to figure out which way do we go along with this as well and understand like their roles and and Sienna Miller was likable in this. The raid. Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay.
I have extremely strong feelings about that character.
Go on. All right. So anyway, my point is there were a lot of people that I liked. Like, yeah, okay, I like this person, right? At the same time, and maybe that's the difficult thing, Megan. You were talking about this. Is like, because there's not a central character, this film presents challenges to what we expect from a filmmaking perspective, which is a central person or two, a lens through which we can view the world around us that is somewhat similar to the intended audience. And it's not offered here. This is, like you're saying, this is the history of a place. This is, in a lot of ways, this is like an environmental history. And Kate, I know you've got a lot of thoughts on this, right? Like, and I've tried to think about that in my own book where I'm writing about this. Am I writing Seminole history? Am I writing Cracker history? Where I cite your work, Kate, Megan. Sorry, I keep seeing your thing on the. No, it's on the screen. It says Megan Kate Nelson. Kate Carpenter.
I know.
So annoying.
Should I do like?
No,
should I take the Kate out?
No,
I'm gonna take the Kate out.
No,
there we go. We're taking the Kate out.
I know who you are. Okay, I've known you for some time.
I know, but it is when you see it on the screen. This is the problem. Like, okay. Right, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, it's totally fine. But
okay,
yeah.
All right, so these questions like, how do I write the history of these places? Oh, I'll write it of these people. And I'll write it through the history of a place, right? All right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there are ways to do it well, right? Like everyone was obsessed with Game of Thrones. And that show had like literally 57 protagonists. But each season had its own arc. And you knew that all of these people were coming together at a certain place. And the driving sort of impetus to action was the same for everyone. Right. Where, and here it just was not... It just wasn't done well. And it just wasn't, I don't think it was well written. I think that was part of the problem. And I think also when I think maybe Costner, because it's a passion project, got a little over his skis, and no one was going to stop him. He's like Ron Chernow. No one's going to stop him. Right. He's just going to keep writing and we're going to keep getting 800-page books because no one's going to stop him. And so it's just not edited.
Tell me more about Grant. What's his favorite color?
No more. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I think it was possible to do at least some of these storylines well. I think he definitely should have had more Indigenous protagonists, more grounding in Indigenous history. I know that he did have at least one Native advisor and a couple of Apache language experts, but that's not enough, man. This stuff is really complicated. And there are many different bands of Apache peoples.
Sure.
And they sometimes allied with each other and sometimes did not. And they were in all different places. So you just have to know that going in. And it has to be a really strong and I don't really want to use the word accurate because I don't expect a feature film to be 100% accurate, but it needs to be believably grounded in actual we need to believe that these people are doing what they're doing for good reasons, and I just didn't feel like we got that with anyone. How did they end up in these places? And there was no indication. A lot of times a lot of Westerns start like that. A stranger comes into town.
Sure.
And you're sort of given
who
context
is the stranger,
clues.
Right? Sure.
Yeah, who is the stranger? Like, you're given context clues about what he's doing there, is the law on his tail, like all the stuff. But like, we just got almost no context clues either. So it was just like, yeah.
Megan, how did you feel about the diversity that we saw on screen? As I'm watching this, I'm trying to watch it as both trying to enjoy, like as just a guy who, like, I was excited to go to the movies, right? And this was a big thing that Costner kept selling, was like, this is a capital M movie. Let's go to the movies, right? Kind of a thing. And I think obviously he and Sheridan had a lot of beef between Yellowstone, and I think that's part of the reason why he didn't go the series route, because it would have been too. I think he's like, I'm a movie maker, kind of. This is my own conjecture here, right? But we did see, African Americans on screen here. We did see a diverse West, right? To a degree here, we saw ethnically Chinese people with the railroads, which felt almost stereotypical, but also you can't tell the story of railroads in the West without Chinese people, so they have to be there, right? What were your thoughts as far as seeing, and this goes for both of you, like, what are your thoughts as far as the representation that we saw on screen? Our leads are either white or native, and with some supporting characters. So what were your thoughts as far as this goes? We'll get into the gender representation in a minute, because I know both of you have thoughts on that. Capital T thoughts. So,
exactly. Kate, what did you think?
I think it's super commendable that Kevin Costner is trying to show a diverse West in this. Like, I want to say that up front, because he doesn't have to, and I appreciate that he does. But I think, I kept thinking about this idea that we have in, like, when we're talking about women's history, this, like, you can't just like add women and stir. Like, if you're really incorporating more people into the history, you're telling a totally different history. You have to step back and figure out what the story is. And I felt like that was what happened to some degree here, is that he realized he needed to tell a story of diverse West, but he still wanted to tell the kind of same history Western that he has relied upon in the past. And so as a result, like, all these diverse characters end up sort of just being set dressing. And so while their existence is maybe historically accurate, it's not sort of fundamentally shaping the way that we look at the West. And I feel like that's part of where he goes wrong.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, on the one hand, yes, commendable, because you're like, they're not commenting upon,
right.
like,
sure.
They're just there and nobody blinks an eye, and they're just sort of like, yeah, they're part of our community. And that was, fairly realistic. And the fact that, the Army had Indigenous scouts, like, but from different tribal nations, like, they didn't explain who they were. Like, they kind of suggested.
I was making guesses as I was watching.
Yeah,
I was like, I know who you are. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but like, so that was good in that, we did have those moments. But then, yeah, again, like, if you're not going to center them, I mean, if we think about all of our narratives, there's only one really that has an Indigenous protagonist. And even that is the Horizon narrative, which has multiple protagonists, and most of them are white. They're the U.S. Army officer, and then, of course, the widow, because you cannot have a Western without a widow or a prostitute. So we got both of those.
I mean, yes.
Yeah. And, then we've got, like, Luke Wilson as...
Okay, well, I want to get into casting here in a second. Hang tight on the Luke Wilson thing.
Yeah, as a sort of hapless kind of wrangler of this wagon train that is supposedly, moving along the Santa Fe Trail in the 1860s, and there are no other wagons in sight. And they're sounding like this is the first wagon to ever go along the Santa Fe Trail when the Santa Fe Trail opened in 1821. Right. And like people have been traveling this road for 40 years.
This is a well-established road. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. The ruts are so deep, they still exist in the prairie today in southern Colorado.
And here in Kansas City.
There you go. And in Kansas City. And so, I mean, they're just... certain things where you're like, what?
All right.
What are they doing? It was so frustrating.
Do you want to talk about casting now? Actually, like, okay, if you're listening,
Sure.
we're going to start venturing in. We are going to venture our way into spoiler territory now, not unlike our travelers who are just making their way west. I do want to talk about casting.
And
go. I see that.
I'm making my cocktail now, which I could tell. So listeners, this is called the Marigold.
It is.
After everyone's favorite prostitute, Marigold. The hooker with a heart not of gold.
No, right? I mean, there was some curveball. There's some curveballs here.
Coal.
Right.
A heart of coal.
Right.
Yes. So this is basically a gold rush cocktail. It's 2 ounces of bourbon, 1 ounce of honey syrup, and 1 ounce of lemon, with an addition of the bitter tears of disappointed historians.
All I'm really hoping to do is like get this show sponsored by like Buffalo Trace. I'm like, come on, let's just fucking go, right? That's all. Okay, so you're absolutely right. In fact, I've got my phone in front of me here, and I'm looking because it's the only way I can remember anybody's names from the show. Because I was like, oh, that's Michael Rooker's character. Oh, that's Sienna Miller. Blah 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 blah. Right. Do you want to maybe talk about high points and some of the casting that you did like before we get into the Owen Wilson diatribe? In a moment, or were there cast members that you liked?
I liked the Sykes brothers.
Okay.
Who were the super hotties from Montana? Montana territory.
Bad.
I know, but
you can be hot and bad.
They're hot and bad.
Wait a second. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to start smoking in just a second. Like I need to I have tattoos. What else?
Listen, you need to get a long duster. You need to get a long duster.
Those fur coats.
With the fur on it.
I could do.
You got to drape a fox or like a raccoon or whatever the hell they had.
Right.
Drape it over your shoulder and start kicking people in the chest. Like that's what you need to do.
The elder.
Yeah.
Yeah. The elder.
Like, he is.
Are you gonna be a minute?
His whole look, though,
do you need a second, Kate?
His whole look is somewhere is somewhere between like what he is, I guess, which is Montana outlaw, and like Russian oligarch.
That's right. Yeah, they were sort of. I mean, they were the ones who I was most interested in their backstory,
really,
right? Because clearly they've got. Because I was wondering, I'm like, well, first of all, Montana territory doesn't exist yet. In 1862. So that's problem number one. But problem number two, I'm like, okay, well, how did this family get here? How did the matriarch become who she is? She's played by a well-known character actress. We know from the other Jenna Malone story that the patriarch has been like messing around. We don't know quite the nature of that relationship, but it seems like it was sexual assault that resulted in a baby.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get the baby, which seems to mean like, they're very interested in like the whole patriarchy of handing down to the sons and whatever. But like
until they're not.
Right.
And and then they've got like this whole cast of characters on their porch, which includes like an indigenous man or two. Like they've got this whole situation going on. And I'm like, who are they? How do they make their money? How did they get their power? And they were the only ones I was like actually truly interested in. And I don't think it's just because the boys were super hot, although that could have had something to do with it.
I like how blatant
show. I think part of it's that they're the only ones with like a developed storyline. And so it's like, yes, I would like to know more about what's happening.
Did this not feel almost stereotypically Appalachian to you? Like
there was a weird, like it had a real like.
It felt a bit Appalachian to me. I'll shit you not. The dad, the one that got shot, that's what my father looks like or looked like. So I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. I also come from Illinois. I'm just saying. I didn't turn out like the guys, but I'm also not a horrible person.
You're not a murderer, hopefully.
That you know about,
Aww.
So I'm just saying, not yet. Maybe, I don't know. All right, we got. I did find the interesting thing about the matriarch, right? Because here's like, we're kind of talking about like, oh, this has got the damsel in distress. At the same time, mom clearly knows what's going on with Jenna Malone, and she's still giving orders. Like, it is very much like it's her show. She's running the show, especially after Paul gets shot and may or may not make it. Right? She's sending the two brothers out, and they are out there to do her orders, no questions asked. Right. Aside from the hot hillbillies of Montana, were there anyone else you were interested in?
I mean, I like Sam Worthington. I just felt like he didn't get to do anything except sort of pensively stare off in the distance.
And Sienna Miller.
And make out with Sienna Miller for no reason whatsoever.
Inexplicably.
Because she's Sienna Miller.
No. I understand why he wants to make out with Sienna Miller.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't understand why she makes out with him.
Actually, no, she's not really my type, but go on. But there is someone.
And they're not really, like, yeah, because even that wasn't well developed.
Rushed,
it's not
right?
like.
Are we going to see it? I kind of wonder if we'll see this kind of filled back in the other because I have the sense that like we're going to get some of this like backstory kind of some of these other stories kind of filled back in these other installments, right? I feel like, especially after we saw that montage, which when we got to the montage, I'm like, the fuck is happening here? Right? Are we at the end?
It took me a while.
I was like, is this what's coming next? Because all of a sudden, like, Costner gets a haircut and he's fighting and he's gun shooting and he's a sheriff. And I'm like, I'm down for all that shit. But is that all we're getting here? Like, and
it also seemed way more interesting than anything that happened.
Thank you, right? And it happened really fast. It happened. There's like, shit, we can tell this story in 7 minutes.
This movie was like the throat clearing at the beginning of your draft that you need to cut, and then
wait, we mean draft? I just send my shit and like, let's go. Just wait till my book's ready, Kate. I'm gonna be like, well, how was your first draft?
Wait.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Tell me about your revision process.
Just let it rip. That's what I heard.
Oh, I felt like I was on Drafting the Past for a second. That was like exactly the right tone and everything. Tell me about your revisions process.
Well, it's a long way. And it says means that I hate myself. Okay. What about Michael Rooker? There was a lot of buzz about Michael Rooker's character.
Which one is he?
He's the Irish sergeant. He's the Irish sergeant.
Oh.
You know,
with the wife, the mourning.
Yeah,
wife.
I was surprised that the wife.
Okay.
I think what surprised me with this, I want to serve a couple because we talk about the curveball. Marigold is not the hooker with the heart of gold. She is like she's fucking bailing on that baby. She's
Hang on.
She doesn't even leave him with
Kate's gonna defend Marigold. Here it comes.
I am here for a defense of Marigold.
Well, not yet, because we're gonna kick the shit out of it first. We got to give you something to defend. We're going to come back to Marigold in a second. Here's what I done.
Okay.
I liked that we did not get a full-on version of the American Army as a wholly negative entity towards Native folks. That there were absolutely folks who were part of the American military who were like, we know this, right? There were people who were incredibly sympathetic, who were sympathetic and following orders. And of course, there were also people like, hey, there's money to be made here. I was kind of surprised that we got maybe a bit more nuance out of the American military position that we got. I was expecting that to almost be a big bad. It's like, oh, there are natives here. Let's just go kill everybody. And there were at times those opinions were voiced and then surprisingly shot down in the film. And we even saw guys who were going out there who were like, I don't know how I feel, but once the reality got there. And then Lawnmower Man shows up. Like the casting, and Jeff Fahey is in this movie. Like all of a sudden, like,
who is that?
You don't remember Jeff Fahey?
I have not seen this movie.
You haven't seen? Where were you in 1991? Jeff Fahey.
College.
Okay, so Jeff Fahey's the guy with the white beard who was like handing the kid the gun in the store and daring him.
He's the scalp hunter.
Yeah,
he's a tracker.
We have to see him get his at some point. Like he's like
yes, okay.
There's very few actually in this film bad, right? There's very few like full on evil in this. Even even your handsome bros, right, are like they're not the villains of their own story. Well, are they bad to themselves though, right? Like in their own minds, they are following mother and father. They're doing what's right by the family, looking out, gonna go get baby brother. Almost felt like the Mad Max series, right? A little bit, right?
The blonde one, though, was a complete psychopath.
Yeah. You know who we felt like?
I mean, he just sort of picked a fight with Kevin Costner for no reason, and he ended up paying for it.
Yeah, I believe that was in the first historical time. In historical terms, we call that fucking around and finding out, right?
That's right. That's right. Never fuck around with the old man who you think can't shoot a gun, who's like, yeah, I just carry this gun around.
It's just like
don't ever trust that guy.
I thought it was cool.
Don't ever trust him.
When he turned around and Costner's just kind of holding the pistol at his side. I'm like, you sure as hell don't try to quick draw a guy who already has his gun out.
Right? He's already winning.
So bad. It's like, you're so bad at this. You are so bad at
I thought little brother was actually going to shoot big brother. I thought, like, when they were fighting and big brother was kicking his ass, that he was going to, because I kind of liked big brother.
Yeah, sure.
You know? All right. But I do. Okay, let's talk about, let's not like that, man. Y'all, like, half the audience liked it. All right. Kate, let's talk about Marigold.
Yes. Great.
I want to have you defend Marigold. Go for it.
Okay. I do not want to defend many things about the portrayal of Marigold, but I do want to slightly defend
her
Marigold's character.
Okay,
which is
this will tell us a lot about you as a person, I think.
Great. And I'll grant you, so for anyone who hasn't seen the film but is hanging with us through the spoilers, she has been babysitting this child and then ends up having to go on the run with it to protect his life, which she does. At the very end, she bails and leaves him with a family of Chinese railroad workers, which we can talk about that decision in a second. But I want to say that the thing about Marigold is that I felt like until maybe that last choice, she is the only character in this movie who reacts rationally to the totally bonkers things happening around her, right? She is just babysitting. And then there has been a duel in front of the house. And Kevin Costner, a person she has just met a minute before, is like, hey, that guy that you don't know anything about was coming here to kill you and this child. And now you must go on the run with him and upend your entire life. How would you react to that information? It's not normal to be like, cool, I'm okay with that. That sounds terrific, right? And so then not only is she reasonably upset by that, but then she's like, well, Kevin Costner, this is your big idea, so you better take us with you. And then she bitches much of the time. And honestly, I appreciated that about Marigold. Everyone in this movie should have been bitching all the time. Marigold's the only one with the sense to do it. Sienna Miller has just brutally witnessed the murder of her husband and
she
son.
She didn't really witness. She was underground hiding.
Okay. Yeah, because that's less traumatic that she almost died.
Breathing out of a shotgun barrel. Snorkel.
Buried alive.
Screaming as her teenage son is shutting her in and going to his death, right? She's had this incredibly traumatic experience.
I'm going to say with that, it's like,
and then she's just making out with Sam Worthington with no explanation, right? So I appreciate that Marigold reacts like a human person, which is not a thing anyone else in this movie does. That's
all right. I will take that point. Okay. And she does apologize for being such a stone cold bitch, like during that scene. And so I was like, okay, like she apologized, like maybe they're going to have like a real friendship or whatever. And then everything went freaking sideways. Then it was like, oh, okay, so she's turning tricks again in this new town in Wyoming. We think we're still in Wyoming. I don't know. We never knew where we were.
Right.
Also, Wyoming doesn't exist yet either, by the way. And there wasn't like gold mining there.
And don't they say that he has family in Council Grove? Which, anyway.
I know. It was confusing. One of the many things, Kate. One of many things. And so she's then suddenly like turning tricks. And there's some guy we've never seen before, also unnamed. Just a sort of bland brown-haired dude. Yeah. And so he's talking to her and he's like, well, I'm leaving tomorrow. And then he hits her. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then she leaves with him.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And then she leaves a note for Costner, even though she knows he can't read. I'm like, what's happening? Like, what is going Yeah, and leaves the child with
The
the
Chinese
Chinese
couple.
family because, of course, they
Likewise.
will take the baby in.
Yes. Likewise, leaves them a note in English. Fortunately,
Yes.
their daughter is apparently quite fluent in reading English.
Why wouldn't she leave the baby with Costner's character?
I don't know. I
I
mean,
don't
she
know.
does. I feel like that's why they gave her a line where the guy is like, "Is he going to be a dad?" And she's like, "Maybe he'll
Aw.
grow into it." I think it's supposed to be like he's not going to take care
Yeah.
of the kid, but he totally would
Yeah.
have. He's
Yeah, I
already
mean,
taken them on.
there's a Jeremiah Johnson-esque aspect to the Robert Redford, like, you know,
Right.
who does not want the family who eventually grows. You know, there's the famous look in
Right.
that film, which I believe is one of the most beautifully shot films of all. Sidney Pollack directed his fucking ass off in that movie. But that famous meme, like the GIF that we saw in there, where he's like, does a nod, where like Johnson's like, "This is my family, and I like this, you know." So you get the sense that maybe Hayes Ellison could grow into that, but, you know, due to the montage, maybe he just, you know, he's just. You also talk, okay, his character actions also make sense to me. He's a guy who's just kind of working his way around. He's a laborer of some sort, right? Working horses, things like that.
Yeah, did you guys understand what he did? I felt stupid because I felt confused and I didn't know what he was
I
sharing
got the
with
sense
his friend.
that he's a guy who's just like, you know, he's just kind of taking jobs to get by. You know, he's a kind of a jack of all. He's a hardy guy, right? Who has clearly knows his way with the gun. There's a backstory there, and again, there's almost like a Boba Fett aspect to this, right? You guys were talking about like, oh, there's no backstory here. Like, I don't always need to know because when I know too much, we've all seen the film Solo, right? Like, you ruin the character. So I'm okay with him being a drifter of sorts and things like that, and then kind of be like, okay, this guy's a dick and he's got a gun. He's clearly going to go kill this woman who I have no affection for, but I don't want to see a woman get killed. There's some level of code there where he's like, I can't let him just go kill her. This guy's clearly a threat. I have every reason to shoot this guy. I'm going to. And then he's like, okay, hey, I was almost surprised that there was really no inward debate where he was like, oh, should I take your knife? It's like, get in the fucking horse and let's go.
Yeah.
You know? So his character actions make sense too. He's like, oh, I found myself in we got to roll.
Did you get the impression this happened to him a lot? The little like silent communication with his friend where his friend is silently like, did you kill that guy? Well, yeah, I did. All right, you better go.
The sheriff?
They've been here before.
Get out of here. No, his friend who came in with him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
On whatever they were they bringing horses or were they
horses?
bringing horses?
Right.
Was it gold that his friend asked him for?
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly cannot rember.
You know what? I actually watched A Million Ways to Die in the West on Sunday night after watching this on Saturday, so I'm getting the two of them a little mixed up now. Like, when does Charlize Theron show up? Talking about beautiful people.
Yeah, sadly, she does not show up.
Give it time. I feel though, like I don't know, his character actions kind of made sense to me. Like, I like Costner as an actor. I mean, so much of the stuff that he's done. We'll get into filmography here in a bit. Like, I'll watch the guy. You know, I'll give the guy the benefit of the doubt. If he's got a movie coming out, I'm gonna watch him. Right? You did, however, Megan, refer to Luke Wilson.
Yes, I did.
This was the only thing. This was the only cast member, because I really thought the actors were generally, whether or not you like the story or not, good actors, right? Who were portraying their parts and stuff like that. Oh, real fast. Did you have a problem with the age difference with Costner and Marigold?
I was cool with that if they were going to be like friends. I thought it was going to be a kind of like buddy comedy situation.
Okay.
Mostly, I was not like offended by the age difference, like during the spoiler alert sex scene. What I was offended by,
although weird,
was the like. He's like, oh no, because she basically just like jumps him, and I think this is like, because of what she's about to do. It's like we know it's like a goodbye, but like he doesn't know that.
Right. So
she like jumps on him. He's like, no, and then he's like, oh, I'm all used up, and she's just like, don't worry, I'll do it. You don't have to do anything. And I was like, oh, For the love of God.
See, I was actually taking notes on what to say.
No.
I was like, oh, babe, I'm all no. Damn it,
No.
All right, I'll get this goddamn jacket.
That was not.
That's not what we do.
A woman-centered scene.
Oh,
that was
the fantasy of a 69-year-old man who just got divorced.
Wait,
oh my God!
Wait.
Kate Carpenter just went there. Kate Carpenter just went there. I love it.
Okay, fine.
Can I give you a thumbs up? Where can I do that on the screen?
What were you
doing that right there? Can we just get the shot?
You're allowed to talk on your own podcast here.
I had one when we did. They were like, I just lost complete control, and they started asking me questions. I'm like, what the fuck? All right. Let's go back. Luke Wilson as Matthew von Whedon.
Oh, he's Dutch. I didn't even know that.
He's clueless. I thought he was awful. I can't separate him as an actor from like his other roles.
No.
Old school.
You guys? Yeah. Have you seen the SNL bit that's like the Wes Anderson horror movie trailer?
Oh my God, no.
Oh, I highly recommend you watch it. It's genius, okay. But it was all I could think of whenever Luke Wilson was talking.
See, the thing for me with both Wilson brothers is they have such a distinctive way of talking.
Yeah.
That they're always themselves.
Yeah.
And so it felt to me like cosplay. I was like, what is happening? And the only people, hilariously, I was like, okay, something's wrong with me because I feel most compelled by the two psychopathic murderers.
Yeah, you keep coming back to this, Megan. I'm a little freaked out.
I'm saying and the adorable hapless British couple.
Okay,
he's the artist and she's just like the artist assistant / wife.
Can I have my turn?
Clueless and hilarious.
Is it my turn?
You can go, Jason.
All right. Goddamn, Ella Hunt. Holy fucking shit. She's stunning. No, you guys already did this with the Hillbilly Brothers.
We did.
Go for it.
We did. Go ahead.
All I could think was like, here's a young actress, clearly beautiful already, but give her some time and generationally, like she looks the part of like golden age of Hollywood level beautiful. I was like, her character was great. I wasn't expecting, like we saw in the montage, there's like more sexual violence coming that we did not see played out here. You know, when I first saw the two guys watching her, I thought almost at first, this might sound weird. I thought almost at first they were playing this for laughs, almost like these are the two doofuses.
For laughs, yeah.
I thought so, right? I was like, oh, these are the two doofuses that see the pretty girl from a distance. Haha, it's whatever. We've seen this in film. And then you're like, wait, as we see in the montage, this is actually going to get much, much worse. Because did we not see her face?
I gotta say that while
bruised in the montage, like it looked like she'd been attacked, right?
Well, and while it felt like it was being played for laughs, and we can talk more about that with the whole wagon train, but I think as a woman watching it, it was the second I saw it, I was like, she's going to get raped later.
Yeah. Okay. And so thank you so much. So I really hope I'm not coming off as insincere here or taking this because I absolutely recognize this. And I was having this conversation the other night about my own freedom when I walk around Colorado Springs, home of amazing badasses. The other night, I was like, I can walk around no matter where I go, and I never, ever, guys, worry about my own body. Not one bit.
Right.
Not one bit, ever. That is just not the case for women. So we read these situations differently. And obviously, I recognize that at first when I was like, hey, okay, and then pretty quickly turn on. But there wasn't that immediate, my default was not to, she's in danger.
But it's also, I mean, you're totally right. And I appreciate that, Jason. But it's also not just like a woman's experience, but also like, I don't know, narratively lazy. I think that like, here's this beautiful, naive, gorgeous, kind of stupid woman. She's definitely going to get raped. And it almost feels like
gonna get killed, right?
The story.
Oh, yeah.
It seems that way. Or he's going to become a badass, which I am rooting for.
Coward of the County. Do you guys know the song? Do you remember the song? Kenny Rogers?
No.
No.
Megan, you don't know Kenny Rogers, Coward of the County?
No.
Oh, Kate, you know this, right?
I don't.
No.
Get the fuck out of here. Okay, there's somebody listening. Go on. All right.
Yeah, are you going to splice that in?
Yeah, make a playlist. Make a playlist.
Oh my gosh, Fletcher, our producer, like he says that if we talk about things in context, we don't get sued for it. All right, go on.
Yeah.
All right, so
Okay.
Kate, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No. All I was going to say is that it just felt lazily. It felt like the natural way for this narrative written by all these men to go is that she's going to be punished for being beautiful and stupid.
Yeah.
Naive.
Yeah. And ill prepared.
Yeah.
To like be out on the prairie, as opposed to the daughters of the other guy who are, they're wearing pants. Because that's how, if you're going to ride a horse and you're going to drive a wagon, why are you wearing all that stuff, right? And like that, and so they are, the whole like Santa Fe Trail narrative, I thought at least had some interesting characters who were like, I was somewhat interested in knowing more about them. Not the Luke Wilson character, I didn't care. But then you also get the sense of threat. Like initially when, you're seeing the cattle rustling around and someone is watching her, which is creepy anyway.
Right.
I was like, is this supposed to be like a native person? Are we going to get like Kiowa or Comanche action here? Like what's going on? I know it was two guys from the, who were working for the wagon train and the, I don't know what their role was. Cause again, we don't know anything about any of these people, but the fact that they hang out together and they're separate from the group and like Luke Wilson goes to talk to them and they're physically threatening to him. I was like, oh, great. Like, yeah. So there's going to be a dispute here where, and I could see that like as a legitimate kind of plot line. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Kate, you're exactly right. It hinges upon the punishment of a woman for being in a place she's not supposed to be, which is like ridiculous. But I did like those two characters. I'm like, it's the artist. I was like, It's Albert Bierstadt. It's Thomas Moran. It's William Henry Jackson. It's like, oh my guys, just out there.
I did want to know why they're there, though. I mean, this was just so frustrating in this movie is that, like, we're never told why they are part of this wagon train. Why these completely unprepared people are here.
Yeah. Like, do they have, like, a commission from someone? Are they there to, like, has a railroad magnate, like, hired them to go sketch pictures of the West? Is he working for, like, the London Times, writing a feature on the West? Sure. I mean, you don't know. You don't know.
Right. Are they there on some, I got the sense that they're there on some naive, like, adventure, like, we're young 20-somethings from wealth in England who are going to go see the frontier before it's gone. And I do want to talk about this idea of the Jackson Turner, or the Frederick Jackson Turner thing, because it is all over this film, explicitly spoken by Danny Houston's character, the Colonel, right? And there's this bit, he's like, so much of I did like how the Civil War, like in dances, is still talked about in this film, right? And even more so in this film than say that. Okay, we'll get there. Like, I want to get your thoughts. No, I want to get your thoughts on this, right? Because I was doing the DiCaprio three-cornered war thing over here. When they would say this, right? But Houston was very much like, look, it's coming, and very much in a sympathetic way towards natives and so forth. He's like, this war is over. There's no stopping this train. So, can we talk about Frederick Jackson Turner, this idea of the frontier, the collapsing frontier?
Drink.
Yeah. There was no way we weren't going to be able to talk about this, right? Like, we've been talking about that goddamn thing since 90?
93.
Thank you. Fucking Chicago, my favorite city. I love Chicago. The only city I like more than Boston, actually.
Really? All right, we're going to put a pin in that and fight about it later.
I love Boston so much. I have one city I like more than Boston. One. Like, all right, but can we talk about the idea of this vanishing frontier, what Costner's trying to talk about this, and maybe, and kind of go from there. We'll come back to Costner in a bit. But what were your thoughts on this idea about where the frontier is in Horizon?
So Frederick Jackson Turner, for people listening who may not know who he is, historian, University of Wisconsin, gives this paper at the American Historical Association meeting in 1893. It's technically the like World's Congresses or something that's like in conjunction with the World's Fair.
It's a blast.
It has all this. It's a blast.
Come have a hot dog, see?
Yeah,
go
listen
on.
to people lecture and then go out and see the Midway plays off.
It's like the WHA. Go on.
That's right. So he gives this talk, which later is known as the Frontier Thesis. I'm not sure. I don't think that Turner actually knew that it was going to basically be today's equivalent of like the thing that most viral lecture
oh my God,
you have ever seen, right? It went totally viral.
What if it were like a GIF? We had like the Frontier GIF, but go on.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically his argument is that the root of American greatness is these conflicts that happen along the frontier line. And that to him, that frontier line has been progressively moving westward. So it's not always been in what we now know of as the American West, but it actually started in the East, and it started, sort of near the Appalachians and sort of moved progressively west as white settlers like Europeans and then Americans started grappling with nature and grappling with native people and building towns and moving in this. I mean, he describes it as like a line moving westward. He also describes it as a wave, like an oncoming crashing wave. And it just seems inevitable and propulsive, and it cannot be stopped. By the time we're in the 1860s, that frontier line is located in the American West, what we now know of, like the Pacific coast to, I abide by the environmental historians line of the 98th to the 100th meridian with how much rainfall you get, where you start needing irrigation. West of that line.
Falls the plow, Sorry, Kate.
That's right. It does. Yeah, we had a moment of plowing in the movie as well. Sorry, that was a double entendre. I didn't mean, but anyway, Frederick Jackson Turner is, sort of defining. He's not the first one to come up with this. Like, he is building it on probably 60 years of accumulated images of the American West and the frontier and what a frontiersman is. Daniel Boone, all that sort of situation, right? But it basically has been the driving force behind most American history and American history of the West until the 1980s. So like almost 100 years. And then it has very much influenced all of our popular culture about the West. And we see this, everywhere, that all of these conflicts that are happening in Horizon and other movies, they are meant to exemplify and sort of prove American greatness. So, and you can see it, it's all over Horizon. Like each narrative has that. There are good guys and bad guys. They fight, they struggle. Costner does talk about, like, he wants to show the Apache point of view here, but I think he fails in that just because we don't get any kind of sustained attention to what they're actually doing. And we also don't understand the larger context at all of like why does this start in 1859? If you're going to give us a date, you have to make good on that promise. Like, why is it 1859? Why is it not 1867? Why is it not 1871? Like, why? But anyway, so this film is very solidly in the Frederick Jackson Turner sort of mode of thought and of kind of the depiction of protagonists and of the landscape itself and the symbolism of it.
Kate?
So in this movie, and I watched Dances with Wolves ahead of
You're like
this.
Dancing with the Stars. Yeah, it's great. You went back and watched Dances after this?
Before this.
You're more committed to this podcast than I am. Go on.
I wanted to be well prepared, Jason.
That's not what we do here. Go on.
I am the guest who did not write a Pulitzer finalist book about this region, so I felt the need to justify my presence here. But in it, I mean, Costner almost quotes the Turner thesis
Absolutely.
in Dances with Wolves, right? When he's asked, why do you want to go out there? He says, I want to see the frontier before it disappears. But I wondered, I mean, Megan, you know this time period a lot better than I do, but it feels like both of these perspectives are oddly not presentist, but presentist from the perspective of the 1890s, right? That like there's this real feeling of the frontier closing, even though these films are set in the 1860s, and a real sense that like it's already over. But I don't know that the historical actors would have felt that way. Like, I think they would have felt a much greater sense of contingency than is presented in these films.
Yeah, I think it depended on who you were, right? Like, I think like Ulysses S. Grant goes on a tour of the West in 1868, and he takes his son with him. I'm talking about fathers and sons. And
Hold
he
on,
actually, I think he takes two of his sons.
Yes, go on.
I know, he takes two of his sons, and he's like, I want them to see the West. I want them to see the buffalo, and I want them to see the Indians before they're gone. But that's like the late 1860s, right? This is when the U.S. Army has already, you know, the reservation system has already been established. The U.S. Army is now dedicated to forcing indigenous peoples onto those reservations. But it's also still like the time period that Horizon takes place in, which we think is like the first scenes are 1859, and then we kind of jump to 1862. Yeah. But I wasn't clear if we were getting all the way to 65, 66. It was very muddy. We never got another kind of time marker. But the 1860s are like the high water point of indigenous resistance in the West. They are kicking the shit out of the U.S. Army along the Bozeman Trail and forcing the signing of a treaty in 1868 that closes all of those forts on the road from the Platte River to the gold mines of Montana. Like, this is the rise of Sitting Bull, the rise of Crazy Horse. It's the rise of Cochise and Geronimo in the Southwest. So that's why I was like, who are these Apaches? Like, they're not, they kind of mumble like Mimbreño, and then there's sort of like someone says White Mountain at some point, and I'm like, I don't think anyone was named the White Mountain Apache until later. But like, and I'm like, these are based on location. It's the Chiricahua. But like, in 1863, the U.S. Army kills Mangus Coloradus in cold blood, who was one of their major chiefs, 70 years old. And the Chiricahua rise up, and like they initiate the Apache Wars, which last until the 1880s. So this is a moment of like full on indigenous pushback, like across the West. And you don't get any sense of that in Horizon. You get the sense of like, I think because Costner's like, I wanted to show them like being confused and like, but like, what are these people doing here? And they're not going to stop. And I'm like, dude, they knew about American size and power since fucking Lewis and Clark. Like, they knew, like, and they have been adjusting and moving to meet Americans like in a bunch of different ways. Diplomacy sometimes, outright violence sometimes, you know, negotiation and treaties sometimes, like, and you get none of that backstory in this. And you don't in Dances either. I mean, and in Dances, that's the Lakota.
Yeah.
And all you know about the Lakota is there's this one small band. There's no mention of Sitting Bull. There's no mention of Crazy Horse. Like, there's no mention of this greater like alliance with the Cheyenne and Arapaho. And it's like,
who don't know how to use guns, by the way.
Vanishing. Yeah, they've never had a gun, even though they've been trading with the Spanish and the English, you know, 4 of them, and the French for like.
I remember watching Russell Means tee off on this. He was like, "Are you serious?" But go on. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, it just is. Again, like, whenever I see these things, I'm like, these guys just need to. How hard is it to like have one historical consultant who has done the reading, like? And this is dramatic stuff. I don't think that you need to, I don't think it will ruin the narrative. I think it will enrich the narrative if they are working in these details. And it actually makes the white protagonist much more vulnerable in these spaces if you are aware that like this is native land and they are acting to defend it everywhere. Like, and everywhere where these narratives are happening too. It's completely insane.
Yeah, I mean, and this is so here's my hope for this series, because I feel like I'm gonna go watch the rest of the series, right? I'm hoping that we'll see more of that. Like that's the only thing. Like I'm willing to like note it and be like, okay. And that's the reason why I'm just like, okay. Over the course of 4 films, are we gonna get that? Are we gonna like? Did we get a taste of an indigenous perspective here that we're gonna get like a larger story of later in 2 or in 3 or whatever? Right? I hope so, because if you're absolutely right, Megan. I think that what we got isn't enough. It's definitely like you definitely want to see the internal dynamics of people saying, okay, here's the thing. We everybody knows this is coming. What do we do about this here? Do we sue for peace? Do we ally ourselves? Do we do whatever? All we really saw were people leaving to go off, and like what happens next. The scene in the store, really, boy, that was tough for me to watch. And Costner,
I thought that the one really big missed opportunity was with that young boy character.
The young white boy, or the young
white boy.
Yeah.
And because he gets on the horse and he's the one who notifies the soldiers that this has happened, right? And there we have, I will say it, the best scene in the movie.
The horse scene?
The nighttime chase.
That was a good scene.
The nighttime chase.
Costner can direct a film.
He can in parts.
Okay.
And he goes, and I thought what was going to happen, like, because who let him go off with these scalp hunters? Like, who let him do that? I was like, is there no community ethic? Like, and why isn't like our Merry Widow like taking him in? Because who would have done a good job with him is Sam Worthington. And like maybe he would, like, maybe that's where he's going to ultimately end up. Mm-hmm. But like clearly this is a kid who's been through trauma, and that store scene is where you see it, right? Like he's so angry, he's so traumatized, he wants revenge, but he can't make himself like shoot someone in cold blood, especially like when he knows it's not the person who killed his family. Right. So like, but he's being pushed to do it by these violent guys. But I'm like, what is happening here? Like, this is actually a character where we could see over time some super interesting development. And instead he's like, off with these guys. And they are attacking an indigenous camp. And that was in fact like scalp hunting was like a reality. And it was also, they attacked whatever camp they could, because again, like, I think one of the characters actually said, like, who cares which scalp it actually is?
Okay, so that was a thought. Right? I thought they did well, where they were trying to reason with the guy who was like, look, we're only in this to go get retribution on the people who attacked us, right?
Right.
And he's like, well, nobody can really tell. I mean, if you want to make some money, and it's like, if you want to go down to Mexico, you probably couldn't tell the difference either, right? I mean, this racial things were at play here. I was like, oh, geez, this is how this is where that slope, goes.
Well, and it was straight out of Cormac McCarthy. Yeah. I mean, that was Blood Meridian, like distilled.
I want to ask you this. We came up, great friend of the pod, Lauren Leseb Shepherd, when her first time when she did, with Luke Wilson's film, with Old School, we came up with a segment called What the Florida. So I want to ask you this. And so this is so pertinent to my work, because the way that I'm considering the book that I'm writing right now is really kind of conceptualizing Florida as the West, or trying to write Florida in a way that is in its own way the West. My man crush on Dan Flores knows no bounds, and I will not apologize for it whatsoever. Yeah. Sarah Dant just emailed me the other day. She was like, hey, do you want Dan to come on? I was like,
oh,
maybe. Yeah, it's just not even. It's like, do you want to come down and have drinks? Do I? Okay, throwing a ponytail right now. But I'm wondering, what happens if we set Horizon in Florida? Megan, I read your book on Okefenokee when I was writing my disc. This, we would talk about it. So I'm kind of wondering, and you can be playful with this. Is there a story in Florida that we could tell about this at all? I mean, because you talked a little bit early on. Your first book is in Georgia, and so forth. So I'm kind of wondering, why don't we see a Florida history? We always talk about the West, or maybe we've seen some stuff elsewhere. And these, when we talk a lot about, say, early American history, we always talk about, say, the quote unquote 13 colonies, and Florida gets left out of this discussion. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of wondering, can we make a movie about Florida? Is there a story here?
I think you could definitely make any movie about Florida that you want. I think what it would be, I don't think it would be a Western.
Okay.
Because I'm going to get like hardcore about
Go for it. Go. Like, I want to hear.
And Kate, you tell me if you agree. Because there is the argument that the West is a process. Mm-hmm. Kind of a la Turner, right? So if you believe that, then you believe like the West is a moving target. It can be wherever you want it to be.
It's very easy, yeah.
You can make a Western in Florida. Totally. There are enough like similarities with certain communities. You know, you said it in the swamp, all is good. But if you believe, like I do, that the West is a place, with a specific environmental profile, then you could make your movie about Florida, but it would be a Southern and not a Western. Kate, what do you think? Do you agree? Or do you disagree?
I think I have to confess that my Florida knowledge is limited, and
it's the South. It's the South.
And perhaps I have tried to keep it that way in my life. But I think that, I think the West is a place. And I think some of the battles for resources that are happening are so essential to what makes Western history. And I think that those are different in Florida. And it seems to me, and this is where my Florida history might be totally wrong, so you can just tell me that I'm way off base here, but it seems to me that the like massive presence of the federal government in the West is such a huge part of the story that is hard to recreate in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I've often thought, especially if you want to go from a historical perspective, what happens a lot, say in the context of this film, say 1859, 1863, kind of in some ways plays out in Florida during the Seminole Wars and things like that, where you do get this massive influx of American military. A lot of the same players are there. Quacachee is captured and is in Fort Lauderdale in 1841. At the same time, a young lieutenant named William Sherman is there, so a lot of these guys kind of cut their teeth out there. But yeah, I kind of wonder. Mostly I set this up just so we can make fun of Ron DeSantis. But wait till we do the Raiders of the Lost Ark episode. I say he's really just a Frenchman running around.
I do think the Sykes brothers would be very comfortable in Florida.
Oh, yes, they would. They'd have to abandon their long duster.
A little bit.
New wardrobe.
That's not tenable. They'd be very sweaty.
A little bit. Would that be a problem?
They would get some... this is where the alligator cowboy boots come from.
If they were the big, tall, sweaty gentlemen with negative clothing?
No, okay. Not necessarily. But I do think, I think there would be a really interesting movie. There could be a very interesting movie set in like the Florida borderlands in the 1820s, because then what you have is like a really interesting mixed community of like indigenous people. You have Americans, you have, people, still Spanish and English people from that period of Florida's, the crackers. Is that the C word? Yeah.
Did you know I was banned from writing that in my dissertation?
Really?
Yeah.
Did you put it in quotes?
No, absolutely not. There is a well-established cracker tradition in Florida now, or people that's like in Florida, that's their version of redneck or coon-ass or anything like it has been made into a thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Well, yeah, for the Okefenokee, I was talking about swampers, which is a very specific iteration of that term, of sort of poor white rural. But so you have that group. Then you also have, Black men and women who are trying to escape from slavery in Georgia and coming through Florida, South Carolina, also heading south, which is an anti-intuitive direction to head for freedom. And so that is a very interesting space at a very specific historical moment. And I think you could make a really interesting movie about that, like an interesting historical film that is about community and that's about people trying to like do what they're doing in Horizon, which is to create a new life for themselves, right?
Hold on. I'm making a note to have you blurb my book.
There you go.
That's it. Sorry.
There you go. Yes.
All right.
But it would not be a Western.
All right. Let me ask you this. Let's talk about other Westerns then. Because one thing we do want to talk about in this pod is when I originally pitched this to you, I was like, you guys want to watch Horizon? And you were like, yeah. So you want to talk about Kevin Costner? You're like, okay. So I want to talk about Kevin Costner's The West as we kind of round the bend here. I went back and looked at his filmography. I kind of sent this to you. We've got a bunch of movies. Silverado comes out in 85. Dances, obviously, is the big one in 90. Wyatt Earp, we tend to sleep on, 94. I put in Waterworld as a Western. I know this goes against your idea as far as, but maybe the whole world is underwater, therefore what is West? I don't know. It plays with the same themes. The Postman, 97. Open Range.
Oh, yeah. And that one he wrote, like the... Yeah. It's basically Dances, Open Range, and Horizon are the ones that he's written and directed.
Yeah. I don't know how you feel about Hatfields and McCoys as a Western, but we talked about this idea of this moving West. I threw it in there anyway. Highwaymen, I don't know. Then, of course, Yellowstone, which is the other one where I think you kind of have to, even though it's Sheridan's thing, Yellowstone kind of resurrected Costner's career. He was in a bit of a lull. So... Are we noticing, looking back at those films, are there films that you either like, that you really don't like, that what's Costner having to say about the way? It's clearly important to him. You know, I think maybe before Yellowstone, we would associate him mostly with sports films and baseball.
Yep, baseball.
Right? But also I think now it's baseball and the West. So what are your thoughts? What is Kevin Costner's West to you? Like, are there films here? Are there themes? Are there things that you like here? The things that drive you nuts? Were the things when you went in to go see Horizon were like, shit, based off what I know about Costner, this is what I'm expecting to see. It's an open-ended topic. I just kind of want to get the idea as far as what's Kevin Costner, when we talk about the West, what's Kevin Costner's The West to you?
I mean, I will say that my favorite of all of those films by far is Silverado. And the reason for that is, I mean, it's a great film for a lot of different reasons. But here's what I also wish for future iterations of Horizon, and I don't know if it will happen, but will someone just crack a goddamn smile? Because like, it was so, I was going to call, like if I was going to do my review for Slate on a different vein, it was going to be called Horizon. Why so serious? Because it is serious. These are serious topics. You know, trauma is serious, you know, indigenous, you know, land taking is serious. But part of the sort of whole job of depicting people as real people is that they laugh.
They live, laugh, love.
They live, laugh, love, man. They do. They have a journey. They have an emotional journey, right? And the great thing about Silverado, that to me, it was one of his first movies. He played a complete goofball moron who was like just a crack shot and fun. And everyone thought he was fun. Everyone loved him. And he was hilarious and amazing in that movie. And I love that movie. But it also is a movie that is sort of uncomplicated because the big bads are the corrupt sheriffs, right? So like this is the shift in Westerns from Native people being, you know, really a part of the film and the enemies, and then being completely erased from the West in these visions. And all of Costner's best films are the ones that do not have Native people in them because the narrative is much tighter. And he's not trying. Although I will say, I did go back and watch Dances, and I was like, oh, okay. Because there are depictions of the Lakota laughing.
They are fun.
Being real, like,
Human.
being human and having relationships and marriages and like parental relationships and
internal
you don't
squabbles.
see that.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. But that's I am wishing not only for a Sterling Harjo Western, but I am also wishing for another Silverado, like that has that same kind of loose spirit and that kind of like taking things on, but doing it in a way that is actually like engaging.
Did Silverado not feel like we were along for the ride? Like when the four guys, when Kevin Kline and Scott Glenn and Danny Glover and Costner, did it not feel like Kevin Costner? So good. But all four of them were great, right?
All four of them were great.
You just totally buy it. That hat. Yeah. I gotta go get the Kevin Kline. I was thinking the other day I want the Kevin Kline hat. But like felt like, whereas this you were watching the movie.
Yeah.
Right? Kate, what do you think? You went back and watched all the Kevin Costner films.
All of them.
I didn't watch all of them. Couldn't handle that.
Notice how none of us were like, why? None of us were like Wyatt or.
No.
It's so overshadowed by Tombstone.
I would like to make a pitch that Field of Dreams is a Western, but
it is a Midwestern.
But that aside. That aside, I mean, the thing, I feel like I just am just going to be like the stick in the mud here. But to me, the thing Kevin Costner is saying about the West is that it is for men. That's just like the most consistent message that arises. It is not the message he's trying to send or that he thinks he's trying to send. But to me, it's the one that is there most regularly.
Well, he said that.
Yeah, I mean, Megan and I talked about this ahead of this movie, that like he talked really specifically about how this film like has all these strong female characters in it and how women are going to drag their husbands to see this movie. And that's what makes his Westerns deep. And I don't know that Kevin Costner knows any women based on that.
That's right.
I spent much of the movie trying to decide which of these women he felt were strong female characters. And in the end, I wasn't sure, except maybe for the matriarch of the Sykes family and maybe Jack Malone, who's quite interesting. But, like almost every woman in this movie has a child in her arms through the whole thing, which isn't to say that you can't be a strong female character when you're a woman and a mother. But, they all exist very much in the service of men's plot lines in this movie.
Yep. Absolutely.
I kind of wonder if maybe we would have been better off if we'd had 4 separate movies focusing on one of the groups, right? Seeing it through their eyes, whether it was the Hayes Ellison, whether it was the indigenous perspective, whether it was like, and so forth. And then maybe that fourth, God, these things aren't cheap to make, and bring it, and to kind of bring it all together. Yeah. I mean, well, I'm invested because I want to see what he has to say over the course of this, how this is going to play out. And I think the next one's coming out in August, and I think we'll get a sense of
on my birthday.
Is that right?
Wait, when's your birthday?
August 16th.
And
you're a Leo.
When is your social security?
I feel like I did know this. I think we did know this already.
I feel like we already agreed that it was inevitable.
Leo season.
You know what? It's my birthday in 17 days. So it's cancer time. I'm just saying. All right.
Okay. You're almost a Leo. You're Leo adjacent, and we'll take that.
You know what I am is almost 50. I'm 47 in like 2 weeks. And
welcome.
I am fucking dealing with this shit right
That's
now.
An excellent age.
Is it though?
Hey, man. I'm about to turn 52. Bring it.
All right. That's
Bring
fine.
it.
Okay.
It's good.
All right. We've made it to the end here of all of our films here, of the films that we like. We'll come back at some other point in time and talk more about some of these other stuff and so forth.
Chapter 2,
right? Like called
oh my God.
Megan and Kate said so. Like if there's no if there's no half nude sweaty men, I'll just ask somebody else to come on and be like,
That's right.
That's right. Megan, every time you come on, this show devolves into like a smoke show competition.
I'm sorry, I can't help it.
I'm fine with it. It's
we didn't even talk about my favorite character.
Go.
Oh, who was your favorite character?
That as you and I and Megan talked about, the Hispano guy that we do not learn anything about.
Who was that guy?
Yes, he's so mysterious.
Hold on. Who is he?
Yeah.
I'm looking at his character.
We don't know.
There's 4,000 characters. Alejandro. See Chavez?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is he
born in 1984? Yeah, Alejandro Era. Are you guys Googling right now?
No. We're just watching you Google.
I know.
Yeah. This man is far more handsome than I am. It's not close. So we are not, ladies, we are not posting a picture on him on this fucking podcast. I can tell you that much.
Let us just say, Kate and I will just say, just as a PSA to all the women listening out there, the straight women, watch for that character and pay attention. And hopefully we'll get more of him.
I hope so. He shows up for this pivotal functional moment in the film where he kicks aside the dresser and he has this very interesting but inexplicable exchange with this racist guy. And then he never, I guess he's kind of in the background, but we never learn anything else about him. It's so disappointing.
But he chews on a little cigarello.
Are you guys gonna be okay? Do you need some more time?
No. Listen, Kate and I are gonna make a fortune writing. We're gonna write a sexy Western. We're gonna write a sexy Western and we're gonna make $1 bazillion. And
this is how 50 Shades of Grey. You're gonna write 50 Shades of Hay. Is what you're going to write.
It's going to be a female-centered. It's female-centered.
Jason, that sounds so itchy.
I know, it does. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants the hayloft sex scene.
Take you to my danger plateau. All right. This is going downhill fast. So, final thoughts on Horizon Chapter 1 of many.
I don't know. Are we gonna give it stars?
Yes. You can get. You know what? We're gonna
or saguaros or I give it 2.
Well, how many peppers? I feel like for you guys is probably the
peppers. Maybe a little hatch green chili.
Oh, very nice. How many hatches?
I'm gonna give it
out of 5.
1 hatch out of 5.
1 hatch.
I was thinking 2, but I thought that was too generous.
Nelson does not like this movie.
I think I was feeling too generous.
I feel like you would have given it more just based on the view that you had.
No, because I'm mad. I feel like these need to be spin-offs. I feel like we need to know these other, just a Sykes movie and just a mysterious New Mexican man story. One hatch chili. Kate, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with, I don't know, maybe 1.5. I'm pretty mad at Kevin Costner because no, well, I'm genuinely angry at Kevin Costner, both because I did not enjoy my 3 hours. I could not believe how long it seemed to last, and on top of that, I want to know if it gets better, so I feel like I'm going to have to see the second one, and then I will waste another 3 hours of my life.
I feel like if we see the second one, that'll tell us whether or not to invest in the third or fourth. I'm willing to go back for one more.
Okay, so are you guys going to go to the movie theater to watch it, or are you going to wait for it to stream?
No, for me, can I be I still very much enjoy the pageantry of the theater. I know it costs a bunch of money and so forth, but I also know when I go to the theater, I'm going to put my phone down. I still love the aspect of going to the movies. I still enjoy getting my Milk Duds and a large Coke, not Pepsi. First thing I checked at my theater here was the Coke place. I like seeing the trailers. I feel like we see too many trailers, and we were talking, I love trailers, but 35 minutes of trailers before the film when it's a 3-hour movie is it's too goddamn many. Oh, can I ask real quick before we go? What were your thoughts on that montage? Because by the time we got done, I was like, fuck, we're over? At this point in time, I was settling for a long flight. I was like, let's go. You show up here in Paris.
I'm here for you, Kevin Costner.
I was, okay, because I do feel like he's got something to say about the big bad here being this company in New York. We finally see Giovanni Ribisi for half of a second. And I don't know if he's really cast properly either. It's hard for me to see.
It's hard to
like
tell.
Yeah, but it's like the montage. Is this what's coming? Like, I feel like we needed the word saying "coming next."
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's like, oh, montage time. We got half a movie to go. And then,
because at first, what I thought was happening was that we were getting a little bit of like, here's what happens to that. First of all, I did not realize until I read it later that all 4 of these chapters are supposed to take place over like 12 years or something. I thought it was going to be a much longer time, but but I first thought the montage was just covering like the next couple years so that when we start in chapter 2, we'll like jump ahead a little bit.
Right.
But then it was so many and clearly like plot lines we didn't know anything about yet that it was like coming attractions. It's very confusing.
I was confused. I was really confused.
Yeah. The only reason I was not confused is because I read about that in a review. So I knew it was coming. And once it came, I was like, hallelujah, this thing's almost over. Because I knew, but then again, it was so weird. And it was and I can see like if you had no preparation for this and you didn't really know anything about Western history and you didn't know, like you would just be completely lost. I mean, the fact that we were lost and like we've done a lot of reading. Like we understand what's going on. Like
we know words about things.
We know words about things. We talk about these things usually in an articulate way, unless we've had some cocktails in the afternoon. But no, it was just, there was.
All right. It was just is our final review on this. I'm going to call it now because you watched this movie for 3 hours.
Well, wait. Yes. How many hatch chilies are you going to give it?
Out of 5?
Yeah.
7. It's like, let's go. The West is for men.
Jason.
You did not love it that much.
You did not.
Be
real.
There was a bathing scene. I was like, that was high. People are like, oh, you bastard. I'm like, are you guys just now discovering this about me? There's no redemption arc here for me. I'll give it 3.5. I think there's potential here. If we take this on its if it's a single film, I don't think it works. There's just not enough here or anything. But I also think we all know that this is one of a bunch of other films. So it's again hard to review because we haven't seen how this whole story, how this whole narrative plays out. So cinematically, Kevin Costner obviously graduated from the John Ford School of Landscape Porn. There's like we've all been through these areas. It is insanely beautiful. So I'm looking at it going, oh, I know where that is. I know where that is. That's really pretty. Blah blah blah. I'd say 3 right now because I think it can be something, and I'm going to reserve the right to change this later. Because if it's shit later on, I'm going to move it down. But if it all kind of if he's able to tie it together, I think it could still be special. But we're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see what because it's like this was the introduction to all this stuff. I don't know. Ella, call me is what I was gonna say. And I'm good here. So that's. Listen, we've all had our moments here. That's it. So, Megan Kate Nelson, Kate Carpenter, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us, Jason.
Yes, thanks for having us. It's great to see you guys.
Awesome. And that's a wrap here at Historians of the Movies podcast. Thank you so very much to our guests, Megan Kate Nelson and Kate Carpenter today. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, of course, to our producer, Fletcher Powell, for continuing to make this show run. And thank you most of all to you guys for continuing to to share this podcast, supporting it. You can find this now on YouTube as well. So keep liking, keep responding, keep sharing this, and we'll keep bringing you more stuff. Ciao for now. Bye.